Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show with PW. First and foremost, thank you to our sponsors. We have Jason, Levon, David. Thank you guys for your continuous support. You guys can support us through Patreon. We're going to put all the links down below. Judo TV, use discount code Shintaro. Thank you very much. Higashi brand, of course. That's my thing. Thank you so much for your continued support. Reach out to us if you want to sponsor the show and then get a shout out or a 30-second advertisement or whatever it is. Thank you very much again. Welcome, Chris Round. Thank you for being here.
Shintaro, great to be back. Thanks for
what's going on? What have you been up to these days?
I've been busy with a few different things. I'm actually graduating my PhD on Thursday.
Oh, congratulations. Cool, that's awesome. Yeah, what was it again? I always forget. Chemical engineering?
Environmental science and policy. I look at the interface between artificial intelligence and attacking deparsing.
All right, so this whole episode's going to be dedicated to climate change.
But the main thing I've been working on has actually been, other than that, of course, that's a little evolving. I've been working on my judo club. I've been working on the nonprofit.
Yes.
So the judo club is High Noon Judo, based out of High Noon Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Alexandria, Virginia. We're just outside DC, and that's been very exciting. Then we launched a nonprofit last fall. Actually, you know a couple of the board members. I remember Radu.
Oh, Radu's on there. Nice, great.
Yeah. And then what we do with that is we kind of have three fronts we're working on. One is we work with athletes in terms of mentoring, make sure they have resources. Okay. So right now we have Lakea Vargas, Solomon Schran, Madeline Solis, Justin Mata, just to name a few. We have about 6 or 7 people total. And then the other thing we do is we try to help build opportunities to just grow judo through like the camps that we're running. So I'll talk to you about that a little bit.
For a little bit of context, though, if you're listening, me and Chris were on the same team together, Team Force, back at Jimmy Pejo's when I was there for a year trying to make an Olympic team back in like 2011, 2012. Chris was there also. So we go way back, and now Chris, he's a judo black belt, obviously, and a jiu-jitsu black belt too, correct? Yeah, so he's a double black belt, runs his dojo, doing big things over there, getting a PhD. So that's who you are listening to. We did a previous episode too. You guys could probably go back and talk, right? And listen into it. We talked a lot about like coaching properly and using data to drive decisions and how to guide your athletes and things like that. So that's a really interesting episode. Check it out. So didn't mean to interrupt you. You're working on this nonprofit. How's your dojo doing, by the way? Is it growing?
It's growing. So we're not big. We're not a big program, but what we've been able to do is we have people sign up and they don't leave.
It's good
because we've created dojo culture that's very inclusive. I make sure. Look, going into nationals this year, we've got 2 people that could threaten to win a senior black belt. And don't get me wrong, I get really hyped about that stuff.
Who are they?
Justin Mata, who trains with us and trains with American Judo and Jiu-Jitsu out of South Carolina. His original sensei is Elijah
How far are you from South Carolina?
Fletcher. Like 8 hours. So Justin just joined up as a fellow with my nonprofit. He had come up previously and done a little work with us, and then he was at the last training camp where we worked with Al Adrissi, worked with Nefeli Papadakis, worked with a few different, and he had great experience, and they kind of checked out. So, and then we have Madeline Solis, same thing. She came to one of our training camps, really liked the coaching, came back up to check us out some more, and she trains with us and Eastside.
So the nonprofit's separate from like your actual club running day to day, like guys in the room, training group. There's a general population, like a Gen Pop group, right? Do you segment basic, beginner class, and advanced class, or is it all the same one big mush?
We do segment slightly. We basically say we have 2 operating curriculums at any given time. So we have the advanced one, which cycles on about a 24-week basis. And then a basic one cycles on a 16-week basis. So interesting thing, and actually this will touch a little bit back to our previous episode. So we've been working on we try to change our pedagogy and stay on top of whatever is the latest and greatest according to literature. So like, for example, when you're hearing a lot about stuff like the ecological model of learning, stuff like that, we'll look at that, and because we record so much comp data on our main players, so we've about 15 people.
What kind of research? So like ecological approach, like that's all the jiu-jitsu guys are just kind of echo chambering that thing, and most people don't really know what it is. And is there actual research studies in grappling about this?
In wrestling. In wrestling and in basketball. So a lot of the research that's been done on this is actually in other sports. So you have to look at, all right, So we can go. There's not really a lot of research in terms
I
of
was about to
judo.
say,
I
yeah.
actually, yeah. So the what it's funny. There's actually a really good book published by Routledge looking at it's like the science of judo. It's actually a lit review on terms of a lot of different areas that judo's that where there has been research on judo, and there's very limited research on the ecological approach within a judo setting. But they were able to in the review they said, hey, look, two things we found. One is the more shapes someone actually knows, the quicker they'll actually
Yeah.
advance under an ecological model. And this is really important when we talk about judo because judo we spend so much time dedicated to developing shapes. We talked a lot about shapes last time
Yeah.
I was on. Um, and actually, my basic curriculum is pretty much all about teaching people how to make all the fundamental key shapes. Like, how do you create the hook for Ouchi? How do you, the body movement I do for Uchimata and Osoto is ultimately very similar to an extent. So, like, trying to get so people get all of those
Yeah.
shapes down before they're ready to move to an advanced curriculum, which does use a significant amount of influence from that ecological approach. But the more experience someone has going into that, as long as it's good experience and they have good habits, the quicker they'll advance. So because we record all this data and I use Athlete Analyzer as my principal platform for this, I was actually able to sit down and look at, all right, how are my students doing before we implemented some of these strategies? How are they doing after? And it's not as broad a scientific study as I would like as a PhD, but
Yes, like sample size 4. Yeah.
yeah, like based on the sample size of 4 people, it is larger than that, but it's not much better. It's like 10.
Still better than what anyone else is doing, if you're looking at, right? Let me just teach the way I've been taught and see how it goes,
So with the changes we've made in the last year, so like one of my high performance kids, like the family's like all in, they're going to all the major tournaments, stuff like that. So she had made 20 significant attacks in an entire year of competing. Not just like, hey, I kind of, like real, like made an attempt to throw kind of thing, or at least like bothered the foot enough.
Out of how many matches?
20 or so.
20 matches?
20 to 30.
So she's making one major attack per match?
Pretty much. She's very gun shy. Let's be clear. You know where I came from. That's not enough under my book. So if those of you aren't familiar, Jimmy teaches a very, very aggressive style judo. But what I ended up finding was actually the first 2 tournaments that she did more attacks in one of those tournaments than she did an entire year. And not just like she made 25 attacks. Yeah. She made 80.
Oh, wow.
So actually we're able to measure and see where these changes are, like how is this impacting each
That's
student?
20 attacks a minute.
And we saw this 80 across several matches.
I was about to say, okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be insane. Though actually, I believe that's kind of one of the Brazilian match strategies. That's one of the reasons why you see people getting cheatoed out against them in Europe all the time.
The Brazilians do that kind of a thing, yeah. Out hustle.
But yeah, so we're looking at this one tournament where she had 6 or 7 matches. We see 80 attacks in those 6 or 7 matches compared to 20 across like 20 to 30 matches. And this was after 2 months of changing to the style teaching.
Well, that's pretty good. What are you giving her cues and stuff? Or
of course.
So
I'm very active math side.
All right, so let's see. Ecological approach research studies in wrestling. Like, can we talk about that? What did it
I wish I could.
Remember?
I need to go back and dig it up. Unfortunately,
next episode for us then. But you could
next episode.
So, but do you remember like some of the it was a good sample size? They were they looking at beginners or intermediates, or do you remember any of the something?
A lot of the focus I had found when I was looking at like the ecological model teaching, it wasn't just, to be clear, it wasn't just wrestling. They looked at things like basketball. They looked at other.
We don't care about basketball.
And so that said, you will care about this example. From basketball.
Is it boxing out for getting rebounds or something? Then that's a little bit more relatable.
It's not far. It's actually about guarding. It's about sensing where the other person's weight distribution is and where they're going to go next.
Interesting.
So that's very relevant as a skill for judo. Spatial awareness where the person is, etc.
Yeah, that's very interesting, man. Yeah.
So what they found was that athletes who just learn to dribble around a cone to move around when there's some kind of interference were completely like night and day difference between them and just giving someone to just kind of pressure, play a little game with in terms of pretending to guard, and creating a very constraint-based approach whereby the person who's learning how to dribble properly around movement, it's much closer to the real thing. Now it's set up in a way where, you know, the penalty for losing in that circumstance is smaller than just like the game being switched over, the ball's changing hands. So like people feel more willing to, feel more comfortable taking risks. And that's actually the point of that approach, really, is that you're creating constraints that allow people to, in their brain, like feel more comfortable shooting an armbar from guard, because if it doesn't work, we just reset back. They're down points, so to speak, versus being stuck underneath.
And then also minutes. It's, you know, deliberate practice, right? Just spending time in that position. You know what I mean? And you know, and that's good. You know, you spend like 20 minutes in that. You know, I read an example by the guy Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about it. It's like how many times you see that high backhand. You know, when you're playing tennis, it's like in an actual game, you're just playing pickup tennis. You see it twice maybe in a whole game. But you spend 2 hours, you know, just being exposed to that one stimuli. Now all of a sudden you've gained a year's worth of exposure in just that one shot. You know what I mean? And similarly to that, like, oh, you know, you could just have time on the shot on goal and all this stuff. And yeah, it's a very good approach, you know. But I think it's just like, it just kind of annoys me to hear ecological approach now, because everyone's just repeating that term over and over. You know what I mean?
Well,
you're the only person that was like, there's actually a research study about it. You know, I tell people. It's research back, but I wasn't even aware of the research. So you're way ahead of me, buddy.
No worries. You know, what I'll say is this. I think one mistake people make when they look at that approach is they think, well, it means I don't have to teach my students anymore, so to speak. They think, oh, we do all basically variations of situational inquiry. That's not true at all. You actually need to make that work well. You actually need to have a pretty deep level of technical knowledge.
For sure. You gotta give them feedback, like, right?
You have to give them feedback. You have to know how to design the games. You have to know what the underlying principles are. Like, to be honest with you, it's actually, I think it's a kind of really advanced way of coaching, and it only works if you yourself are highly.
You like warm-ups?
Oh my God, great question.
Yeah, I hate.
No,
I hate
really
warm-ups.
Don't.
It's like the biggest waste of time, dude. This kind of game, when you're just like, all right, guys, we're going to lightly grip fighting, no intensity, 20%, just move. That's the best way to warm up. Warming up, doing the shapes of the that's relevant to what you're actually going to do full speed, as opposed to statically stretching or going through these motions. You know, there's people who need an active warm up to do push-ups because they never do push-ups on their own. But, you know, any sort of person who's already in the dojo, like majority of the people are already in decent shape. You know what I mean? Because if you're completely out of shape, a lot of people don't come to the dojo. You know what I mean?
So it's interesting. You know, I was mentioning just before the show, I actually just listened to, you had spoken to two of my mentors. You know, spoken to Jimmy, spoke to Radi. And one of the things Jimmy brought up in his podcast was, you know, the whole thing where you have people walking off the street and they're deconditioned. And how do you, and, you know, how long it can take to onboard somebody. What I found with these games is that I can, with some of them, not all of them, to be clear, some of them are, you know, this is, all right, all the senior black belts getting ready for senior nationals, you're going to go do this. But for a lot of the beginner people coming off the street, playing like, if you've done a Neil Adams clinic, which I'm sure you've got a chance to share that with him at some point. I'm sorry.
Okay. He was in New York, but you know, I had too many kid birthday stuff and this and that, and I just couldn't, you know, make it out there. He was in New York. It was a big deal for everyone here, but I just kind of like couldn't make it out. You know, single dad stuff. You know what I mean? You know how it is. I can't really burn an evening with my kid, you know, because I got to make dinner for her, make lunch for her, all this stuff. It's tough to break out of my schedule. You know, she knows, hey, Papa's home on Tuesday. It's like, oh, Neil Adams here on Tuesday. She doesn't give a shit about that. She's 6, you know? So, yeah, I have not shared a mat. Everyone thinks like, oh, he was in New York. I didn't go. It's okay. It's fine. It's cool.
Well,
you know?
There's a cool drill that he does that actually it's very similar to some of the stuff we do, where you just go out and your goal is to touch the other person's lead shoulder.
Nice.
And you actually, like, that's an example of like a constraint space approach where like I'm trying to defend and offensively deal with stuff at the same time. The amount of, you know, the penalty is relatively low if I lose. Like, it allows people to like have a chance to have fun. And this is the other part of that research that's important, is basically when people have fun, the traditional way of like, all right, we're gonna go do 2,000 Shikomes and we're gonna be bored as shit and tired. Actually, you can do that. You will learn the shape that way. But if you set things up in a way where it's somehow actually fun, the number of reps it takes drops from 400 to 600 to 20 to 40.
Yeah.
Now it depends on the complexity of the movement. Uchimata is still a relatively complex movement, but like you can teach a lot of throws that way. You can, or at least teach people how to get into throws that way.
Yeah. Agreed. So you don't have you guys do a lot of static uchikomis? Yeah.
None.
Yeah, me too.
Almost none.
Almost none.
At the beginner level when they're first learning footwork, yes. But just maybe there's something to clean up with somebody. But no, it's moving, it's dynamic, or why are we doing it past white belt?
Agreed. Okay, so your dojo has been running for a little while now, right? And then, but less than 2 years, and you're renting mat space from High Noon BJJ. Is that correct?
Well, actually, it's a total partnership.
Nice.
We're not renting space. Yeah, so we operate under their umbrella. Nice. And then what happens is the way the nonprofit interacts. I run both the judo program and the nonprofit. So a lot of the nonprofit events, like our training camps, they end up being hosted there. And then it helps to raise money for the nonprofit, so we can, one, help people go and compete and get the right training opportunities, and two, we're starting to try to work with partnering with some other judo programs who want to, offer scholarships, training scholarships to youth coming from tough homes.
So how are you getting the funding for this?
Donations. The camps raise money for it. The clinics raise money for it. So, for example, we have a big clinic we're prepping, not a big camp we're prepping for on July 6th to 12th. We have you coming in on June 1st.
I'm doing a seminar over there.
Yeah. So all these events, they raise money to help put people to tournaments and training opportunities, and also have to keep the nonprofit open so we can partner with clubs and help them help it.
Nice. And that's going pretty good. Yeah,
it's going great.
What's your student base like right now? High Noon Judo.
22 people.
22.
And then Yep. Which small, but what's funny is mix, mostly adults. But the kids we've got, they don't have a ton of training partners, but they're competitive on the junior national level. But it's all you though, right? Because 99% of it. So I have 5 assistant instructors who work underneath me and help me.
Let me ask you a question. You doing work too? Like you have a job yet right now?
I have a day job. I work
research.
I work at not quite. I'm a project manager working with the Department of Energy through Booz Allen Hamilton. I help to bring early energy technologies and help to get them up to speed.
Nice.
So it's interesting work.
It's probably tough for you to get out at like 3 o'clock to run kids programs then.
Yeah, so I do have to rely on my assistant instructors, and I have a great set. Nate Whitney, Jordan Stone, Alex Painter, Heidi Holtz, Brendan Reddy, a few other people who help out from time to time. And I'm really lucky in that respect to have their support, because they're all awesome human beings. And they get some discounts in their memberships, and I go out of my way in particular to make sure that they're taken care of. They don't have to pay for a lot of stuff at clinics.
Like instructorship, like incentive, because we don't really have that, and what is the assistant instructorship thing like?
So 2 things. One is they get discounts in their memberships. If they help with more than one class a week, they tend to get almost their entire membership comp.
Just more than one class, they get their whole membership comp. That's pretty good.
I have to double check with our book person, but they get the idea is I don't want anyone who helps me with this stuff to not get something back. I don't agree with the model of having paying customers, unless it's like explicitly like you want to do like a coaching instructor training.
That's different. Because that's a service that you're providing. You should be compensated for that, because you're probably putting together a curriculum. You're probably thinking about it a lot. You're probably giving them feedback. You're probably structuring things around their training if you're doing that, right? Because I know how you are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm anything. I am nothing if not scheduled and organized on that front. But I don't believe in this model that judo has relied on. And I get very angry when I see it from established for-profit clubs, particularly. If it's a nonprofit club, okay. But, or if you've got somebody who's a competitor who already is getting a lot more extra attention from you, and this is how they're, I can kind of put up with that.
Yeah.
I was fine with, like, the way Jimmy did, I was fine with, because I was part of Team Force and I got a lot of his extra
Yeah, and you were
time
able
and
to
stuff like
train in
that.
the
It helped to
mornings
train me
and
as an
all this
instructor.
stuff. Yeah, there's definitely a lot.
So yeah, so that I got a lot out of that. What I don't like that I see some happen with some places is that they'll go, all right, hey, paying member who pays $200 a month, you're going to teach for me once or twice a week and get no compensation. Thank you for your money. Like, you're contributing to a for-profit business. In some states, that's actually illegal, and without compensation. So you have to make sure. People think that volunteers are unpaid. That's not true. I learned this working on political campaigns. Volunteers are paid in
Let's talk about
fun.
political campaigns.
Oh, for the love of God, don't. I was like, the one came out, I was like, no,
Chris,
don't give him
what
that
is
opening.
your stance on abortion? No. I'm kidding.
So the but volunteers are paid in fun, they're paid in access, and they're paid in support. So a good example here, in my case, my volunteer assistant instructors, they're actually getting money off their memberships, they're getting some monetary support. They are getting access when we have, a lot of times when we have big clinics, unless it's something that's really, really expensive, they don't have to pay. They get, and I make sure there's space for them if they are paying. If, the data analytics work, a lot of the data analytics work, when I work with outside people, it's $200 to $300 a month for that support. Cause it takes a while. Like it can take you a half hour, an hour to go through a 60-kilo match. So they get that support for free. They get, if they need to call me at 2 a.m. because they have a technical question that's keeping them up at night and this has happened, I'm going to pick up the phone. They're going to get that kind of support. So one of the things that I wish when we look at a lot of people and I understand that there are some dojos that are nonprofit or some other element, but I think part of the professionalization of judo is treating what we traditionally thought of just volunteers, instructors, and treating them like what they are, which is they are providing a service to the club, they're providing a service to the dojo. Make sure that they are compensated, because those are the people that are going to keep your dojo alive. When, I had to take off for a family emergency for a week last week, and, I had people to cover. It was no question. We were all set.
All right. Agree or disagree with this statement? Well, first of all, your family's good?
Yeah, they're good. Thank you for asking.
You're not talking about the lizards behind you, are you?
I am not talking about the lizards behind me. They're doing in great shape.
All right. Agree or disagree with this statement? Judo should be free. You ever hear that?
I disagree.
No. Yeah.
I disagree with that.
I hear this all the
completely.
time, dude. I hear this a lot. And people are looking at me like, mat fee, drop-in fee. They're like, I'm a black belt. I'm like, more the reason to pay. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
it's like
you're an informed consumer.
Yeah, man, it is like that. That really drives me up the wall a little bit. When they feel entitled to free judo because they're a black belt, and but why? It's like you just spent $12 at Starbucks and then buying this and that and then taking $45 classes at Soul Cycles, but you can't support one of your own. That drives me nuts. I pay a mat fee. Sometimes I'm gonna go to Yonetsuka's dojo in Cranford very soon, and I'm gonna pay a mat fee. It's $20. That's what he charges everybody. I will not leave there if I walk in and be like, "Yo, if you don't accept this, I'm not staying in training." End of discussion. But
Good
that's
for
like
you.
how it should be. I think. Especially like you got to give back to your clubs. You know what I mean? You got to give back to your dojos, and
and I've made occasional exceptions on the mat fee stuff, just because, hey, this is somebody who, look, Shintaro, if you walk into my dojo and say you want to train, my first instinct, just because we were teammates and stuff, will be, you don't have to pay. Then you're going to probably have that mat fee anyways. Yeah. But I have made exceptions for people who it's like, this is actually a training partner that I might pay to come in anyways for such and such a person. But like, there's still a form of payment there. It means they don't get to turn down the rounds I want them to go.
Yes, for sure.
But that's such a specific instance. That's like, that's like when we have what we see in like boxing or MMA, where someone will be brought in to act as a training partner to simulate somebody. Outside of that, I mean, if we don't have money flow into these dojos, and I try to be very charitable with my time and everything, but if we don't have money flowing into the dojos, they aren't going to exist. That's just the fact of the matter. Now, if you're not, and even if you're a nonprofit and you're going, hey, well, we provide services, then just tier your pricing, like, because, even if it's something where it's like, hey, if this is an area where I know people don't have a lot of money, I'm going to say it's $15 to $20 a month or something like that for kids. That's cool. Like, I get that, but still ask for something, because
Yeah.
if you give it away for free, it's not
Oh,
worth anything.
absolutely not. People value these. Money's a whole. There's a psychological component to money. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I found the people who I just gave free memberships to almost
No,
never
they won't
came.
come. Yeah.
Whereas yeah, versus the people who would
Yeah.
pay, like, all of a sudden they're there
That's
three
true.
times a
Very
week.
true. Let me ask you a
Mhm.
question. So that training center now that they have with the guy Eric? Yeah. Is that
Yeah,
close to you?
about 8 hours. I took a crew down there in December when they had the
Yeah.
national
How was
training
that
camp.
camp? I'm curious to know.
It was a good
That
camp.
episode just came out
So
last week, or this just like 2 days ago on Monday.
I need to listen
You
to
liked it?
it. I like Robert. No, I need to
Okay.
listen to it. I like
Yeah.
Robert a lot. So I'm definitely interested in it. I thought it was good. I think that my conversations with him have been really
Yeah.
interesting. I want to listen to the podcast before I comment too much, but I think Robert understands that U.S. is a decentralized system, and it's very difficult to get it to completely centralize. And there are people, a lot of people who do know what they're doing, and
Yeah.
the way he posed it to me was very much like, I'm looking to partner with clubs. Like, yes, I want residential athletes, but I also, I want the coaches of the residential athletes to still be involved. Like, I think he has a great value proposition. But it's close enough that I can throw people in a car to drive down and train,
Is it an hour?
or have them. No, it's about
Eight
8
hours.
hours.
That's not close at all.
No, it's close. It's close enough for a camp that I can drag people down.
Yeah. 8 hour
It's not.
drive. Just fly
It's
there.
might be 6, but still, I get what you're saying. I'm used to driving really long
Why? Why don't you
distances.
just take a plane?
um, I don't even know how close is that airport. This is a very good question. But it's also, I
Yeah,
wanted to have a
dude, a
car while
car's
I was
like
down there.
50 miles an hour. Airplane's like 500 miles an hour, dude.
No, I understand that. I wanted to have a car while I was down there because I was running people around for the
Okay,
training
yeah.
camp, and if I need to go
Yeah,
run
it's nice
errands
having
and
your own
stuff
car.
like
I hate
that.
rental cars, man. They're clunky, different blind spots. The seats funny, smells, all this stuff. Yeah, I kind of get it, but 8 hour drive, man, that's out of the question for me. I'd have back issues, dude, if I did that. But the camp was good.
um, oh, camp was good. So it was about two
Yeah,
hours a session. The first hour was
yeah.
technical
And
and
was there enough
drilling.
space to do?
Yes, there was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of people on the
Yeah,
mat. Probably, if I were to guess, somewhere between 50 to 100 people, 50 to
great.
100
Yeah,
people. It was a lot like, I just took one of the fellows, Maddie Acelise, over to Japan. It was cool seeing the number of bodies on the mat on an American
that's
mat.
crazy. Yeah,
That you
we're
like
not
what
used
you
to that. We're not
yeah.
used to that. There needs to be more
No.
collaboration between clubs, and I say this all the time, but I don't really like follow it just because my life gets kind of crazy sometimes too. And we're all doing our own thing sometimes. But yeah, these camps are great, man.
Mhm.
You ran a camp too, didn't you?
Yeah, so I run two a year, and one's to prep for senior nationals, one's to prep for
Yeah.
U.S. Open, and then my juniors get the support they need because they're getting all that training, because Junior Olympics is in between them.
Let me ask
So
you a question. You were
the camp,
mentioning earlier that you wanted to do content a little bit more with your nonprofit and then instructions and things
yeah,
like that. And sometimes
mhm,
it pops up on my feed, but it's not as consistent. Like I remember one you did a little bit of a content with Megumi. She's a
yeah,
Japanese champion that lives in Chicago now and trains there and has a dojo there. She
hmm,
came to do a seminar at your gym, and you guys did like a thing, right?
hmm,
Uh,
hmm.
Tell me more about what you want to do with content.
Long term, I want to develop a platform. I want to have it so it's regular revenue coming into the
Yeah,
nonprofit to support our
yeah.
projects. I am looking to try to find instructors who I think are high
Yeah.
quality and also just generally good human beings who I want to
Mm.
push up, um, and have availability. It ultimately is a nonprofit. So, I look at projects like how BJ Finex has set
Mm.
things up, or how Marcel Garcia Online, or I think it's MD in
MG in
Action.
action,
Always
yeah.
for
Justin Flores is
MG in
doing something
Action.
too now.
I love
J Flow
Justin's
Academy. I've
platform.
never watched it, but I've seen the commercials for it, and I'm like, oh man, should I buy this thing?
Oh, I got it. He actually has, I really love his progression on how to teach Tamoy.
Mm.
Because I was actually, so Yoko Tomoe, Sumigaeshi, I'm cool. I have no issues teaching that. Regular Tomoe was never really a part of my physical
Yeah.
vocabulary. So it was coming up on my basic curriculum. So I was like, okay, well, let me make sure, like, I know how to do this,
Yeah.
obviously, but I'm just curious who else is putting out content on this. And lo and behold, I pull up Justin's Academy and there's a whole thing about Tomoe. And I was able to pull some ideas for how to teach it that made the progression
Yeah.
much easier. Um, I actually think that's a fundamentally one of the really interesting things when we look at modern judo versus when you and I were fighting versus 10 years before that. Because like when you and I were teammates, you could go on to like judovision.org or like find stuff on YouTube. But the amount of material that's just available
It's
now is
unbelievable. And
insane.
it's challenging too. People always talk about the upsides, but there's a lot of noise and a lot of bullshit too. So it's very difficult to sift through. You listen to the wrong thing and you're focused on the wrong thing, you're not going to get better. You got to find the gems, you got
Oh
to
yeah.
find your guru that's going to speak to you, and you got to trust that that person's very knowledgeable, because if you're not an educated consumer, you don't know any better. How can you even have an eye to decide whether this person's worth listening to, you know?
Oh yeah. And I think as sensei is one of our jobs has to be to help students curate
Yeah,
to an
yeah,
extent.
yeah.
So my actual schedule for how everything's taught is like available to my students. They know that like last week was gonna on the advanced side was gonna be, how to score from an inside position, what the general techniques were gonna be. They can
Inside
actually
position, right
see,
versus
hey,
left with the hands, or inside position
y-
in what
um
context?
right versus right, with the hands, basically talking about when you're in a bad position. Someone has sleeve neck on you or same side over the back. Funny enough, one of the things I teach there was something you did to me on a regular basis. I call it a ghost exit. When I would grab your sleeve in your neck, your ability to walk out into the open space underneath my power elbow. I don't know if you recall that, but we were at a training camp in
Yeah,
Montreal. I was dead
yeah.
exhausted. I get my grip, and then you did that, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness, I'm really
I don't
frustrated
remember.
right now."
What,
But it
even
was,
then, like just slipping the head underneath.
yeah, take and literally walking past it. You put your sleeve. I didn't have total control of your sleeve hand. You put your sleeve hand behind my back and managed to rip yourself out.
I don't really remember,
Um,
but man, Montreal used to have some
uh,
great training camps with Nicholas Gill.
oh my
Those
God,
were like
yes.
crazy, crazy training camps, man. Unbelievable.
So it's funny because when I design these training camps, so the first thing is like talking about trying to work together. Like the last training camp we did, I got Ala Aldris and Christina Aldris to come in and bring their group because, I've known them
Yeah.
forever. So it's great to have them come through. I also reached out to the Zowics and Denver Judo, and they brought a huge crew out. And I try to make sure that these camps are collaborative in the sense of like we get everybody's bodies on the mat and everyone gets some representation and gets to kind of raise everybody up because, you know, if we don't do that, then we don't have people show up and attend and we can't
Yeah,
run these
sure.
events. So, it was, and also it's an opportunity for the instructors to all cross
Yeah.
pollinate with each other. I really enjoy how Allah instructs. So it was really cool to be able to see how he teaches showing some body judo stuff, and actually was showing his ashiguruma, and the way he shows his ashiguruma I really
Yeah.
like. Nefeli Papadakis was out here with us, and she actually was teaching a lot of gripping, which is that's usually my wheelhouse. But it was interesting to see because it was a different set of patterns than what
Oh
I grew
yeah,
up
yeah,
with. So it was
yeah,
interesting to watch how she was gripping. She was addressing the same problems, but a little
yeah.
differently. And that to me is fascinating. I love seeing that when it's just like, okay, we're trying to achieve the same goal, but you're doing something you're addressing differently. Like as someone who's like an
Yeah.
academic, I love that part of coaching in judo. I think it's really fun. I think that's actually where a lot of the fun in coaching is seeing, hey, here's different solutions, and then like, hey, is this the right solution for this person, and really diving deep and thinking about what's the right thing for each individual. So we're actually, and the students appreciate that. We're actually bringing a big crew out to senior nationals. We're
Nice.
bringing novice players. We're bringing veterans. We're bringing about
So
a
I
dozen
haven't been out to
people.
nationals since like 2016 or something. There's a
Mhm.
novice division now.
They added a novice division. They added a brown belt
Really?
division. They added an IJF junior division.
Really?
Um, yeah, so that
IGF
way,
Junior. That's junior
and
nationals though, no?
yeah, but a lot of those IGF juniors will be fighting at senior nationals anyways. One of the things that I think we have a fundamental issue with in the United States is match time. So when I saw USA Judo do this, I was ecstatic
Has it done like?
because
Is it? I remember when they first did brown belt nationals, uncontested most
mm,
of the divisions.
I mean, my guys all had a lot of matches last year in brown belt divisions. Brandon Reddy, I think, had like
What
four or five
about
matches.
novice?
I didn't see that as much, but I'm looking at the division now, and there are people signing up. I have a woman who's fighting novice heavyweight. She's got 2 people to fight. Like, it's not going to be 16,
Is it on
32-person
Smooth Comp?
divisions.
I
Yes,
gotta
it
look
is.
at that. If there's a lot of guys, maybe I'll take some.
Oh no, it's not Smooth Cup. It's Sport 80, USA Judo's
Why don't they
platform.
just use Smooth Comp? Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
man.
But so you are able to check it. But yeah, I would take a look at it.
Yeah,
And then the other thing is, though, they are pairing with Golden State, which is what they did with Dallas and
mm.
President's Cup. So now you're able to go and you can. I have one junior who's probably going to fight for 3 days
Yeah,
because they're going to get matches at senior
yeah.
nationals. They'll get one day
Mm.
at Golden State for one division, one day at Golden State for the other division, and they're able to go ahead and get 10 to 20
Mm.
matches in a
Nice.
weekend. Which when you're 15 years old, that's what
Yeah,
you
absolutely. Yeah,
need.
Jimmy said 50 to 100 domestic matches a year is what you need as a up and coming competitor. So yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Man, that's how you gain
Mm-hmm.
experience. That's how you gain experience. Wow, that's great, man. The U.S. Nationals, when is it? Coming up soon, right?
Oh yeah, Memorial Day weekend. It's coming up about I think 2 or 3 weeks, and
Yeah. I was
we're
gonna go,
gonna.
but I'm going to Worlds for judo for the IJF. Yeah.
That's
It is
so
pretty
cool.
cool.
I'm
It is pretty
jealous.
cool. It's kind of nice to be back out there. It's also sad, but it's also I'm very happy for the
Mm-hmm.
IJF. They're doing so good, and then it's like much bigger than it
Mm-hmm.
was and more professional and all this stuff and really, really cool
Mm-hmm.
stuff, man. I love being out there. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's funny. So we were talking about like people you
Mm,
refer to, like it's like I have a go-to list of folks. I have like 5 or 6 people that I say, hey, Suits, you want examples of this go-to, even if it's different
mm,
than what I show. And that's like you, it's Shintaro, it's the American Judo System with
mm.
Jimmy and Travis. It's a few other folks who it's like, okay, these are the folks that I know. They're going to show solutions that one actually makes sense, and two, like are within the realm of what I would agree would be viable. Versus like sometimes you might see something that looks really cool, but what they don't tell you is that's the kata version.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, and that's not the hate on kata. It's just like that's okay. That version is not viable in
Yeah.
international
Yeah.
competition or local competition. Yeah.
Interesting, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Oh,
Nice,
no
man. All right.
problem.
So where can people find you?
Oh, so we're at so you can find us on Instagram at High Noon Judo. You can also find us in Alexandria, Virginia, 85 South Bragg Street. So we've got 2 big events coming up right now. On June 1st, we have
Yeah.
you on that Saturday. And then from June 6th to the 12th, we're going to have Megumi Ishikawa back along
When
with
are you
Lauren
guys? When's she
Meese.
coming?
She's coming for the camp July 6th to
Ooh,
the
nice.
12th.
That's really great. That's really great. Yeah.
Yeah. So she'll be there for a few days, and Lauren's going to be there for
Yeah.
most of it. And that's to get everybody ready for US Open. But here's the
Mm.
deal. Just because it's people getting ready for US Open, I help folks out who are like, hey, I can only come for a day. Well, let's figure out what the pricing is for you for a
Mm.
day. I have folks come in who are a lot less experienced. Basically the only thing I ask for a camp is that you have at least a few months of
Well, of
judo
course. Yeah. You need
experience.
some. Yeah. Got to be at
Yeah,
least an intermediate.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so we have those 2 big events coming up, excuse me. And all together we're trying to do some interesting and new stuff. It's not that I don't appreciate this, but like we're not the dude in their 80s teaching stuff that they learned in the 60s and 70s and hoping it
Mm.
works now. We're trying to stay on
Yeah. How
top
many
of the
matches do you think
game.
you had in your lifetime?
Oh
Competition
my
matches.
God. So Nick DePapo and I are buds, and we were like trying to guess this for each of us. And it has to be close to a
Has to be,
thousand.
right? Yeah.
Or yeah, because like, I mean, dude, I fought you when I was like
You fought me
16.
in a competition?
Yeah, yeah, you double like me into the
Did
next
I?
universe.
I didn't know we
Yes,
fought in a competition. We did?
yeah, because I would show up and fight 73s, 81s, and
Jesus, you're a
90s.
maniac, dude. I don't even remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 15, 16 years old, maybe a little older, and I would because I knew I needed match
Wow.
time.
Over a
So
thousand matches. That's insane. You know what, though? I'm up there too,
yeah,
man, because I remember somebody asked me, like, how many wrestling matches did you do? And I had 100 wins minimum in high school. I remember I did that, like, going into
mhm,
senior year. Wrestled off season, wrestled in college. I had over 250 matches in wrestling alone. So that's just
yeah,
wrestling. So like between that and judo, man, it's probably over 1,000, dude. You know?
yeah. I mean, I'm combining judo, wrestling, BJJ to be
Yeah, yeah,
fair,
yeah.
but but I mean, it's up there, and it's like, and when I think about it, that kind of if I'm trying to bring up a
Man, that's a
competitor.
lot of money. Could you imagine you took all that money and just invested it in the SPY. Next month you'd be rich. Oh my god!
Look, do not bother me with alternate timelines. Keep that curse away from me.
That 1,000 that's impressive, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, though. I'll tell you, actually, kind of like the most interesting time I think of competing was actually I competed for a while at blue belt and BJJ, and it was interesting because it ended up impacting a lot of how I coach at the black belt level in judo, because you've experienced this. You're doing something new. Initially, your instinct is just to do what you already do, but it's eventually clear like you're only going to get so much out of that. So for a while, most of my coaching was actually with BJJ and MMA fighters because they were bringing me very interesting problems to try to help them solve. And I thought, I did that. I was a little off the judo scene from a coaching perspective for several years. And that was because I was really more focused on working with those kind of like unique situations. And it was always interesting to me at the time. And it's one of the ways it's impacted. We're talking about like different sources is, I watch sometimes people do, here's judo for BJJ.
If you're not a jiu-jitsu black belt, man, you don't know you don't know. You need to have both. You need to know both that properly. I've seen guys like, judo for BJJ, sure, let me show you a Tatoshi. It's like,
they're never going to move the way you need for Taio. It doesn't happen. What's the two most successful moves I've had in terms of like crossing the BJJ were Jimmy's drop ouchi, which I would just do from different grips the moment I could snap something, and a step on foot sweep.
Oh yeah, step on the foot. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, either step on or the sticker I learned from Jay. Like, I would just walk out, I'd hook the leg and just wait for them to figure out what was going on. And they would either pull or they would try to take a single, and fine, please do. So though there was enough Soto variation I eventually happened upon that was also pretty good, but it was you would not have come to it if you're just thinking from a judo perspective, because effectively you just walk out and before you put your hands on them, you just hook your heel behind their knee. And that's a solution that's so BJJ specific.
It really is.
So I think, and you probably experienced this in wrestling, having to solve different problem sets probably helps you a lot as a coach and teacher now, because it means that you have a lot of different kind of core points in your grappling knowledge to pull from to resolve something when someone shows up with something like brand new. So it's interesting space.
Do you have a lot of jiu-jitsu guys doing judo in your club?
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of them are very nervous, and when they first start, because they're nervous about taking falls.
Yeah, everyone.
And so one of the things I address this in three ways. One is we do have it's going to be more gripping oriented, which is what a lot of them actually want. It's funny, they initially come thinking takedowns, and they realize, if I can grip fight inside closed guard, I have a much better chance of surviving inside closed guard. But the other is, the game's approach allows us to do stuff that's lower impact, which also helps all the novices. And then the final bit is eventually people realize, this is cool. Like, and we have good mat. We have a safe mat area. Like, we have experienced instructors.
Do you do open guard stuff on bottom?
In judo?
You specifically did jiu-jitsu.
Yes, but not, if I was competing, not really to score. It was, I have a cross collar or sleeve guard that I learned initially from Radi, and I got to be pretty viable from there. But ultimately, if I'm on bottom, if it was a class thing, if I'm on bottom here, it's probably means I've either had to make a tactical choice where I've run somebody who I know is just better in this space, or something's gone horribly wrong. So I worked on that a lot. But how about you?
That's mostly what I work on in jits, bottom stuff. Because I want to get good at it. Once you get good at it, and once you understand what the goals are of like, how do I make this cross collar sleeve useful, with a Delahiva hook or whatever it is, then it's like, all right, you can try to learn to negate it when you're on top, So it was good for me. I do a lot of that stuff.
My black belt exam for BJJ was it reminded me a lot of my PhD defense. Now that I think of it,
you had a black belt test?
Yep. It was expensive.
Expensive? You had to pay for it?
No, it's expensive.
I was about to say, I was like, how much did you spend on this thing?
No, God, no. No, so I was down with some athletes working with Radi. So my ranks in Radi. I was down there, and he and I had a long 20 to 30 minute
Mm.
roll. And then afterwards, hey, good job. And then I was there for the week for a camp. And then about 24 hours later, he texted me and says, I need you to be at the place at
Mm.
8 a.m. I'm bringing a couple of the black belts I'm friendly with to basically provide peer
Mm.
review. And I rolled with both of them and nice guys. And effectively, I was just told outright, this isn't a full comp round. They're trying to see what
Mm.
you know, to see, hey, do you actually know all the things you need to know and function, etc. And it it was it was a exam kind of role, so we're moving around. And at the end, they're like, yeah, I know this checks out. And then they put me. I was fighting out a butterfly guard. I was playing my open
Mm.
guard. I was having to move through each of the positions, and also the inverse
Yeah.
of that. So it was it was a series of technical roles, just to verify, hey, I know what I'm doing in each
Mm.
position. And it's funny, we finish up and they turn to Rod and say, yeah, he's ready to go. He's ready for his black belt. And Radi goes, all right, well, if you can get a black belt, I don't have any
Mm.
on hand to promote you with, but next time you're down
Mm.
here, bring a black belt with you. I'll
Yeah.
promote you. I go, if I could get a black belt before I leave, would we be able to do this? And he goes,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. So what I do, we were talking about rental cars earlier. I walk over to the rental. I go, I'll be right back. And I walk over to the rental car. I drive to a
Mm.
hardware store and I buy a bunch of
Yeah.
electrical tape. And I have that red and black belt from the
Mm.
USJA. And I then grab a bunch of black electrical tape, come back, sit down, and just make a BJJ black belt out of it. And Radi walks over and realizes what I'm doing because I approve of
Wow.
this.
Yeah.
uh, and then I basically handmade a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Said, okay, I have one. We can do the ceremony if
Wow,
you'd
that's pretty
like.
cool. I like that story. That's a good story, man. Nice.
Yeah,
Well, that
yeah.
sounds amazing, dude. Congratulations on that.
So what was? Thank you. So what was your experience like? I'm working towards your black belt in BJJ.
It was kind of scattered, you know. I did
Mm-hmm.
the first time I walked into jiu-jitsu school was ages ago, and I did a summer, and then the second day
Mm-hmm.
they gave me a blue belt because pretty proficient on the
Yeah.
ground. Not proficient, but like I was pretty good on the ground. They kind of started me at blue, and then it was like
Mm-hmm.
2 months in the summertime when I was home from college or something like that. And then I didn't really touch BJJ for a little while, and then I was training. I went to John Donaher's class for a summer, and then he gave me a
Mm-hmm.
purple belt. So like that's
Mm-hmm.
actually like probably like 3, 4, 5 months total of like being in a room. And then like
Mm-hmm.
some of my judo black belts became jujitsu black belts and kind of gave me a brown belt. One of them did. He's like, you're a brown belt now, okay? And I was like, all right, cool, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brian
Mm-hmm.
Glick and I would meet once a week and we would just train together, judo and BJJ. We would just kind of trade
That's
sessions. We'll do
awesome.
an hour of stand up, hour of jiu-jitsu. And that went along. That's just like a weekly thing, just to get together, hang out, talk shop, talk like, parenting, all sorts of stuff. It was that went on
Mm-hmm.
for like a decade, just friendship going back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. And then every now and then I would dip into a jiu-jitsu school. And then he gave me my black belt. And then I started going to Central Jiu-Jitsu maybe like a year and a half ago with JT
Uh-huh.
because it's really right down the street from my house. And then I was like, all right, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna take this seriously, like, cause I can kind of like Gumby my way through positions, like I'm pretty athletic. I've been doing judo and wrestling my whole life, so it's like, you know, I could
Mm-hmm.
hold my own, but I don't really know any of the positions well. I was really
Mm-hmm.
reliant on athletics, right? So now, like, I just spent a year and a half just like learning. I go like 5 days a week, dude. Yeah.
That's
Now,
awesome.
so like I'm very proficient, and I wouldn't say proficient, but like I'm not like where my judo is. Definitely not. But any
Mm-hmm.
black belt could roll with me and be like, oh, this guy's a black belt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, one of the things that's interesting too, like by the time you get to the point where you're a black belt in
Yeah.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you see where things were meant to
Mm.
work in terms of when you think about how judo is and what was removed and how like in a larger self-defense or in a larger sport grappling context where things
Yeah.
would fit. Like understanding that, hey, if I miss this Uchimata, well, the foot's already in between my
Mm.
legs, rolling into a knee bar makes
Mm.
sense. Which we've seen that for
Yeah. Yeah.
years,
For
but
everyone.
like
Yeah.
it, yeah, but that was one thing I realized too, like kind of, it was funny. It was just, I've spent some time training with Kosen judo players
Yeah.
in Japan. And it was interesting to train with them because I would kind of see like what my ideal was as a
Mm.
grappler. If I wanted to be as good on the ground as I was on the feet and vice versa, and seeing how this all could properly interlink. And I think it's not, they're both complete martial arts in their own right. But if you compare them, even if it's only a minor on one and major on the other, I think you end up with a much more enriching
Yeah,
martial arts
definitely,
experience.
definitely. I had no Newaza back in the day, so now it's
Mm-hmm.
like pretty good, and it's nice to have. It's nice to
Mm-hmm.
have. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry when you're in the dojo and a jiu-jitsu guy comes in with crazy cauliflower ear. He's like, I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You don't have to worry anymore. You're like, all right, whatever.
Yeah,
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 I
sure,
got
let's do
it.
it.
I
Let's
got
go.
it. I can take him
Mm-hmm.
down. I can submit him.
Mm-hmm.
Not be like arrogant, but like,
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. So it's definitely you get confident. So
You know what's interesting? There's still not a lot of folks who were on like the national scene from a judo
yeah.
perspective, and then have their black belts in BJJ. It's like kind of like a
Oh,
small group,
definitely. Yeah.
and and like it's kind of funny because a lot of us are all kind of under similar
Yeah.
lineages. Like the number of folks who are under Henzo in some way through Danaher or elsewhere. I know that Alex Moore Jacobson and I are both. I think he's a Ricardo Laborio black belt. I don't know for sure. And then Radi got his black belt from Laborio, and I'm under
It's
Radi.
funny
But
how
like
like that's not
it,
really a thing in judo. Like you don't say I'm a Jimmy Pedro black belt.
no, I'd say like, hey, I started and I grew up at Jimmy's.
Yeah.
But it's not usually like, hey, I'm a Jimmy
There's a
Pedro
weird
black belt.
connotation of ownership. You know what I mean? Like that I don't kind of like in that
Yes.
world of like, hey, I'm this guy's black belt. He's a black belt under this person. It's like, what does that even, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird. I find it a little bit weird, and
It's an
it was no, it was
sorry,
like
go ahead.
it's bizarre how that was like that in Japan back in the day with Japanese jiu-jitsu and
Hmm.
judo. But then even Japanese guys are kind of going away from that a little bit now. You know what I mean? And then the Brazilian guys love
Hmm.
that and they kept that going. And now all of a sudden, like it's not really a thing, except in that community, it still is. They're living in the '60s. You know what I mean? It's such a bizarre thing, but it's kind of interesting. It's unique to their culture. It's like kind of like bringing back the
You know,
oldies, really. You know?
I have mixed feelings about it because there are parts of it I like. I do like the
Yeah.
association. I like that. I like that I can say, hey, I got my black belt under Jimmy Pedro and
Uh,
judo. My black belt was like jiu-jitsu under Radi. It's funny. I
yeah.
realized I was probably the only person running around with a black belt from two different members of the Athens
Mm.
Olympic team. But but at the same time, people need to have room to grow and be their own
Yeah.
brand if they wish
Yeah.
to do that and be their own, have their own thing. So, I think when it's brought up in a way that's like friendly and saying, oh, yeah, well, I know these people, maybe you know these people and stuff like that, when it's done in that way, I'm cool. When it's done in a way where somebody's asserting some form of ownership or power
Uh,
dynamic here, I get a little,
yeah. Yeah.
okay.
True.
So, but judo does it though, I think in a way that we do need to, it's worth talking about is it's not necessarily that people identify as I'm a Shintaro Higashi black belt. It's I'm a Kikuchi
Mm.
black belt, or I'm a black belt from Kano martial arts. I'm a black belt from Pedro's.
Yeah.
Like, I think, that's
Yeah.
interesting. That's more like people identify with the
They do a
club.
little bit more, yeah. As opposed to jujitsu, there's a lot more, so and so's name attached to your thing. Like I don't know, maybe because they
Hmm.
focus so much on lineage. I don't know,
Hmm.
maybe that's what it is, but definitely a different, interesting, different, unique thing there. You know, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, Chris, best of luck to you, man. Thank you for being on here. I have to go pick up my kid, so I don't want to
that's
like
fair.
cut you short. But thank you so much. Great conversation, and these guys will be looking for you. High Noon BJJ. I'll be doing a seminar at your gym June 1st or 2nd. First,
First,
right? So we'll kick it off. Great. We'll make some content. Right? We'll do some stuff.
sounds
You can
great. Sounds like a plan.
pick a list of stuff that you want to show on my channel, and then we'll do it. Right? And then we'll have like a little
Sounds
collaborative thing.
awesome.
It'll be fun. We'll talk shop. So yeah.
Before we go, Shintaro, I just want to say you're doing awesome
Oh,
stuff for the
thank you.
community.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
And thank you for trying to uplift, people like me, everybody else that you're
You're great,
bringing with
man.
you,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it's
you're
much
very welcome,
appreciated.
dude. People should hear your ideas on judo and stuff. You have so much experience. Over 1,000 matches, PhD and double black belt. That's rare. That's very rare. Don't you think?
Hmm. Yes, that
Yeah.
is very
So
true.
I only think, yeah, there's not that many of you out there. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.